Hello, everyone. This is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. And today I said on social media that we're going to be hot today. And the episode is titled something about dirty liars. And man, we have some dirty liars in our government. That's just so ridiculous. And I said I would cover some of the crazy stuff that that happened yesterday. With January 6th, I did make a TikTok today about how people want to continuously use January 6th. People go they see how high gas is, they see inflation and all this other stuff, but Democrats want to focus on January 6th. That is their scapegoat. That's the thing that we've been talking about forever. Now, granted, people who went there, they were, my commentary when I started talking about it last year, which I don't have anything on TikTok because I wasn't on TikTok at the time, but I did do like a Facebook Live and I talked about it a little bit. I'm like, a lot of people went there and they got played. So that is the truth. A lot of people got played and they're going to use this forever. And Republicans, they really should have been talking about the crazy stuff the Democrats did and how they cover for the riots. And they talked about it a little bit. They could be talking about that right now, but a lot of people they don't play the game like Democrats play the game. But the Democrats are going beyond playing. They go beyond playing games. They go and they fabricate their own reality about things that actually happen. They had a moment of silence in vigils for people who did not die that day. They died, but not because of not on that day. The only person who died January 6th was Ashley Babbitt. And she was a protester. She was trying to climb through a window and a cop shot her. A police capitol guy shot her. That's who died that day. And they weren't doing the vigil for her. They were doing it for someone who could, one person who committed suicide, one person who had a stroke, or died they died of natural causes. So I have parts of the vigil. I have Nancy Pelosi leading the moment of silence, like only Liz Cheney is there. Only Liz Cheney is there. To no one else participated in her charade. And then Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, you can see what they really want. They were saying that all across the country there are Republicans rising up, and Biden let you know this is I didn't mention Trump by name because this is beyond me. This is beyond him. And there's so many different people out there that this is affecting, and it's just not about us. And they're making it clear with their language, whether it's them and Obama and other people, that Republican legislators across the country just implementing regular sort of laws like voter ID, that those things are a threat to our democracy. So they're using it as excuse so people in charge at the federal level can come in and take over elections. But that makes our government, our elections, less secure. They want to rig the game. They were mad that Trump won in 2016. They were so mad at that. There was never a peaceful transition. I was there the inauguration day. I was there when Trump was inaugurated. And people were acting crazy that day. People were breaking windows. Someone set a limousine on fire. Thankfully, I left a little bit early with my sister, which I suggested because I was like, I've been to a lot of Trump rallies. I'm like, and my feet were really cold. They'd probably be in a lot of pain if they weren't numb at that point in time. I was like, let's leave a little early. By the time we got back to the hotel, they're like, oh, we're glad you're okay. And then we left early enough for the inaugural ball, but they were attacking people in line, mostly going after vulnerable older women if they could help it. And we were 4 women. It was me, my oldest sister, my sister right above me, Katrina, and then my sister Tina. So there was only Sabrina didn't go. No. And Angelina didn't go. So there was 4 of us there, and we were in line prepping ourselves in case somebody came after us in line, and prepping, like, if they mess with us, Yaktown down, back down. That's Pontiac, just the nickname for Pontiac, just so you know. But we were unscathed. We went inside, and then I guess more protesters and stuff that came after that. I met Lauren Sutherland in during the inaugural ball. She looked gorgeous. Just FYI, you look gorgeous, Lauren. And she had no voice because apparently she was going back and forth with protesters, and there was a lot of them had come out then. And then there were protesters after we had left and came out as well. So there were crazy people and have been crazy people, and there's out front people who were like resist, and people who actually did crazy stuff. But then there was also people who did things quietly behind the scenes. Like, Obama knew that Hillary Clinton and her people were the ones who started the Russia collusion gate. And that was a major news story for years. People still believe that nonsense. There was never no there there. Never no there. And then that was fabricated by Hillary Clinton and her team. And that's become, people knew that, but it's become more evident right now that we know that was a step. And we know that Joe Biden, he was the one who suggested using the Logan Act on Michael Flynn. And we know that there was so much shady stuff going on before Trump got in office that they were taking out liability insurance because I guess they were scared of what would happen when the new guy got in. So they had their ways that they're trying to undermine democracy. They're wise enough not to have their big people go out there and do anything crazy. But they definitely undermined the whole thing the whole entire time. So we're going to be talking about that crazy stuff. But also, there was a COVID study that NPR decided to cover that the vaccine can affect people's menstrual cycles. And this is something that's been talked about for a while, since the very beginning. And so many people online have put in comments on Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and forums. Women have opened up about how they were impacted, or even how they seemed to be. There are rumors about just being around other people and then their cycles were affected, which women can kind of even do that naturally. So that, I don't know. But the point is that these were also like conspiracy theories, even though there were so many women talking about it. And there are people, they said their comments were marked and flagged and removed if they spoke about those things. And now there's a darn study that confirms it. And they're like, well, we're just glad that we have this information now because it confirms what people were saying, what was happening. And I'm like, you couldn't just listen to the people who were saying it was happening? You couldn't just listen to the people who said it was happening? So we got an interesting show. So thank you guys for tuning in. I do want to thank Brighter Michigan PAC. I'm here in their studio today. And as always, if I say something today that triggers you, they don't care, I don't care. It does not work like that. But I'm happy to be here. If you want to take it up with my manager, and there's no manager, I'm that person. So you're just going to have to cry in your, I don't know, get a black tea mug and shed your tears in it, I guess. But no one cares if you're offended. But I do thank them for giving me the opportunity to spread my point of view from a black conservative. So thank you to Brighter Michigan PAC. Please go to blacktnews.com and check out different articles that I have on the website. Please go ahead and share those around. I thank you guys for following me, for watching live. Make sure that you go ahead and share. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. All my handles on all those platforms are at Black Tea News. The only one that is different is Twitter, and that one is at True Black Tea. If you can always go to the website, blacktnews.com, to check out where I am on all the socials and see if there's any events or anything like that going on. If you would like to support Black Tea News, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate. Anything that you guys can do, I appreciate. We've had a lot of growth over the past year, and I appreciate that, but we want to go further, farther, faster, and you guys are really a part of that. I thank you guys so much. And please check out different merchandise that we have on the website as well, like the GOAT hoodies, like the Defeat Joe Biden shirt. Man, I'm about to put out a lot of COVID stuff though, just a little FYI. So please watch on the store. And I do also have books that I've written. I have Slay Your Fear: How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear, which I wish a lot of y'all had read this. This is a nonfiction. It is a faith book. And let me tell you, people were so crazy during COVID. People were so crazy, and it was May the 4th, 2020, I guess. And I thought about that quote from Yoda when he said, "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." And I thought that was so obvious. And some people trashed the writing and stuff, but I'm like that, especially in the prequels, because that was a line in the prequels. But it made a lot of sense. I'm sorry. Especially you could see that unfolding in real time, where people were so afraid, and they're like, "Well, just stay, wear the mask and stay inside because we care about you so much." And someone's like, "You know what? I'd just rather assume the risk." And like, "I hope you die." It's like, what happened? Where's the line? How did it get so drastic? And you could see how fear bred so much hate, so much rage out of people. So I'm like, people need to calm down. And so I'm like, I'm gonna write this book, this little faith book. It's not that long, but it's a good read. So you can go ahead and check that out. But Slay Your Fear, that's one of my books that I have. You can go to blackteennews.com, and if you hit the merchandise button, it does have a link that will take you to my book website, so you guys can check all that, get all my information at blackteennews.com. And I do also have other books that I write for adults, young adults, and children's chapter books. So go ahead and check out all that good stuff. So I have this clip that it's from a movie on Netflix that has a pretty huge cast, and Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the leads in the film, and Jack Posobiec posted this clip, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Leonardo DiCaprio went off on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden." I'm like, what is he talking about? Because I'm thinking about Leonardo DiCaprio wouldn't do that. So what is he talking about? Is like a criminal justice reform thing? Is a student loan? Like, why would Leonardo DiCaprio go off of it? But it's a clip from the movie. I haven't seen. My sister decided to watch because everybody was talking about it, but they must have filmed it way early, and because it's really aligned with what's going on today. But I just thought that was so funny.
The President of the United States is lying. Look, I'm just like all of you. I hope to God that this president knows what she's doing. I hope she's got us all taken care of. But the truth is, I think this whole administration has completely lost their mind. And I think we're all gonna die.
Yeah. Now I don't think we're all going to die. At least I'm not. I don't know what the rest of y'all gonna do, but I'm not gonna die. I'll be okay. And if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. But yeah, the administration is ludicrous. They're insane. And they're really taking advantage of people right now. That they are hearing oral arguments at the Supreme Court for COVID, and the liberal justices are so crazy. Justice Sotomayor, during oral arguments, claimed that COVID deaths are at an all-time high. She claimed that Omicron has been deadlier than Delta. We absolutely know that's not true. She claimed that 100,000 children are hospitalized with COVID, and said that OSHA's regulatory authority is a federal police power. She claimed that hospitals are nearing capacity. And if that is the case, we know that's because of shortages in the ratio of nurses to patients, not because Omicron is the thing that's choking the life out of everyone. Now, if we were at the height of the Delta wave, maybe they'd have like a different sort of case, but it's just not the truth right now. But here's something that I've noticed during COVID, like they with their arguments, and they argued when I like read their arguments and their opinions about the case in New York, when they brought it to the Supreme, obviously got all the way to Supreme Court, but there was religious organizations that were saying, you guys are clearly treating other people differently than you're treating the churches. Like other businesses or whatever, they can be open and have all this capacity for people, based on percentages. But churches, they had like, I think the number was maybe like a max at like 100 or 50 or something like that. But so you could have an auditorium that could seat maybe like 1,000, and it's not proportionate to like the space, and there's like a hard number or something with the churches. And so at first they tried to like in New York, they tried to just drop the case. Like, well, we're gonna just drop the order now, so you can just drop the case. And they're like, we're not stupid. You're probably just gonna reinstate another mandate. So we're just gonna go all the way to the Supreme Court. And the liberal justices would be like, well, medically, this is going on right now, and this is going on right now. And I'm like, but what? Situations will change, correct? But your job is to interpret the law. And if measures have to be taken, then people are supposed to, the government has to like implement the least aggressive measure possible. But what we've done over the past few years, going on like year 3, is just insane. It's just crazy. Like 3 years of this nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So I understand if it was Delta, I guess, and people were flipping out, or if it was in the beginning of the pandemic. But we are on Omicron when we're talking about you got the sniffles and you have to check if you have it because the symptoms are the same. We're now at that point of COVID, and they want to just pretend like hospitals are just overrun now. Maybe because you were firing staff. That's why people are at the Supreme Court right now, sweetheart. That's why people are at the Supreme Court, because people have been losing their jobs. Labor participation rate right now is still stagnant. We're not in a good place. We're not in a good place right now in the U.S. And we have these moronic justices who obviously they're letting it known that they are uninformed on the current issues that they want to base their decisions on, rather than just looking at the law and then deciding off of that. So that's scary. That is absolutely scary. But they said Sotomayor is like the worst one, because she'll like have her assumption and then work backwards from it. It's just really bizarre. And so someone said that she got her law degree from MSNBC. It's just crazy. We'll see how that goes, but hopefully the conservative justices make sense and don't do something redonkulous, because to side with these moronic takes would be tragic. This is a very important day, and I'm just kind of catching snippets of it, so I guess we'll have more to talk about on Monday about it. But these people. But let's get on to January 6th and the whole debacle of yesterday. So let's start off with something that Biden said, and we'll go from there.
To me, the true patriots were the more than 150 Americans who peacefully expressed their vote at the ballot box. The election workers who protected the integrity of the vote, and the heroes who defended this Capitol. You can't love your country only when you win. You can't obey the law only when it's convenient. You can't be patriotic when you embrace and enable lies.
Oh, if only we had a mirror to hold up to Joe Biden, because I think he would burn from the... He's correct that you shouldn't just love your country when you're winning. And you know what? I didn't like when people on the left, when Trump was in office, and people would be so upset and just hate America and et cetera. And I see less of that on the right. Now, I've seen people say that, Obama made them ashamed of the country or something. I didn't like stuff like that either. We can stand the test of time, and we can endure an idiot or two. Okay, America's still great. And maybe people who are in charge of it don't recognize the greatness of Obama. Trashed, go overseas and dunk on America, and said crazy stuff all the time that didn't like. Some people say that they liked Obama, just not like his policies. I didn't like the man either. I don't like him. Okay. But it never made me stop liking and appreciating America. So I love my country, win or lose. But Biden, he is someone who pushed a lot of lies. He's a notorious liar. He's one of the most notorious lying politicians there are. This man who ran for president back in the day and lied about his records, his college records that people could easily look up. Maybe he thought no one would, but they did look it up. It's like it's a disease, diabetes. That's what they said Hillary Clinton had. The media finally acknowledged that she had a lying problem after people had all these conspiracy theories about how sick she was, and then I don't know how. Obviously, she's still kicking it, so I guess people went overboard with some of those things. But when they got to the 9/11 memorial and she was passed out or something, people had to carry her, and they wouldn't have been honest about it if there wasn't footage, and footage got out, and they had to come up with a story and whatnot. And then the media was kind of she does kind of have a lying problem. Really? Yeah, she does. Obviously, she does. But Biden lied about participating in the civil rights movement. Biden lied about the Fine People hoax. He launched his campaign off of that. Launched his campaign, his entire campaign video off of the Fine People hoax. He's a notorious liar. And they said we have to fight for the soul of this nation. How are you going to restore the soul of the nation on a lie, sir? On a lie. A lie like that, that's not a small lie. To convince the American people that their president is a white supremacist who said neo-Nazis are fine people, that is not just a, hey, they suck, I'm going to lie about Trump's hair being real or fake or what. That's just not a dig at someone. That is an incredible statement about someone, their intentions, the kind of people who would support them. And so many people believed it. So many people believed that the president of the United States was a Russian puppet white supremacist. Speaking of Biden, here's something on the campaign trail. Talking about lies. Let's listen to this.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind. That's it. I think all the talk about impeachment and what the Democrats should do, that's fine. It's theoretical at this point. Let them investigate. Let them subpoena. Let them go to the Supreme Court. He's illegitimate. And my biggest fear is that he's going to do it again with the help of Vlad, his best pal, and we're going to be stuck for 6 more years with this guy. And that is terrifying. It's terrifying.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree. And one of the things we have to do here.
Absolutely agrees. He absolutely agrees, huh? And I know you go places and there's people who say sort of outrageous things, and politicians try to find a balance because they don't want to obviously there's people who will be very passionate and people who can be pretty wrong about things, and even though you may think they're kind of off the rails, you don't all the way want to push them off, but you can try to correct someone gracefully, but just laughing haha. I mean, and I guess that's kind of his way of pushing that off to try to make that joke, but that's a illegitimate president, like he's some kind of usurper or something. But that's the sort of talk that they had throughout Trump's entire presidency. They believed that he was illegitimate because he was installed by Russia, because the election wasn't legitimate. So how is talk like that and this lie that they continuously pushed on all these news networks out of the mouths of politicians, out of ex-people who worked for the CIA, all these ex-officials like Brennan and so on, who kept saying, yeah, there's evidence, we'll see it. Yeah, except they kept, dangling, maybe will we, won't we get to that conclusion? And it wasn't there. But they kept feeding the minds of American people this poison. So they could really hold a mirror to their own face. They could really genuinely hold a mirror to their own face. This back and forth, this really toxic us versus them and me and you. It's the whole thing isn't good for our country, period. But people will do anything and say anything to win. Now, people who went to the Capitol and did illegal things, especially people who are violent, it was a riot. And I will say again, people got played. But to act like to use this as a starting point to justify why in Georgia and other places that you shouldn't have to show ID to vote, that's crazy. That's crazy. Or to target or paint every American who went there was bad. I know people who went there. I don't know anyone personally. I think maybe secondhand, maybe people went inside the Capitol or something. I don't know. I know people who went down to DC who were at that protest that, Trump was leading. I know people who went there. Good people. I wouldn't have gone there. But there's good people who went there and had good time, took pictures to support the president and support other people they deemed as patriots. Not people who like wanted to overturn democracy the way that they're painting it, and way that they're using it to justify taking over your elections. I mentioned this the other day. I think I mentioned this on Tuesday. But Obama said in the past the importance of the federal elections not being run federally. And we'll get back to that. I'm going to read Obama's statement. He made a statement about yesterday, and he posted on Twitter. He said, 1 year ago, a violent attack on our Capitol made it clear just how fragile the American experiment in democracy really is. And while the broken windows have been repaired and many of the rioters have been brought to justice, the truth is that our democracy is at greater risk today than it was back then. A lot of people are just kind of waiting, I think, in their cells. I don't know if the process of justice has been delivered yet. Although initially rejected by many Republicans, the claims that fanned the flames of violence on January 6th have since been embraced by a sizable portion of voters and elected officials, many of whom know better. State legislators across the country have not only made it harder to vote, but some have tried to assert power over care election processes, including the ability to certify election results. And those remaining Republican officials and thought leaders who have courageously stood their ground and rejected such anti-democratic efforts have been ostracized, primaried, and driven from the party. Historically, Americans have been defenders of democracy and freedom around the world, especially when it's under attack. But we can't serve the role of leading figures in one of our two major political parties are actively undermining democracy at home. We can't set an example when our own leaders are willing to fabricate lies and cast doubt on the results of free and fair elections. Our system of government has never been automatic. If we want our children to grow up in a true democracy, not just one with elections, but one where every voice matters and every vote counts, we need to nurture and protect it. Today, that responsibility falls to all of us. And on this anniversary, nothing is more important. So just a reminder, after Trump was elected, when he was still president-elect, Obama's people were figuring out they were spying on Trump, but they were figuring out how to undermine Trump and his incoming administration. And Biden was a part of those conversations too. And Obama was a lot of shady stuff happened under Obama. He was pretty slick, and none of it was like, aha, smoking gun, Obama was behind it. But there's quite a few scandals in the Obama administration, more than just him wearing a tan suit. But Trump came in But these people were undermining him. Now think about how shady this is. The former administration undermined the incoming administration, and they pushed certain things, certain lies, certain conspiracies to continuously undermine him so they could reinstall people from that former administration. Biden, who was Obama's vice president. A lot of people who are in Biden's administration were in Obama's. Jen Psaki is a familiar face. A lot of these people are familiar faces. They undermined the Trump administration to reinstall themselves. I'm not saying Obama's on the phone telling Biden what to do every day. That's not what I'm saying. Because I'm sure he'd be probably fuming at the mouth with a lot of dumb things that Biden does. But that was the goal. That was the plan, and it worked. So people talking, like I know the imagery of what happened on January 6th last year was awful. Absolutely awful. But the scary things about the undermining of our democracy happen behind the scenes. And we've talked about that quite a bit on the show. But they are playing you. So what are Obama and Democrats like them wanting to do now? Well, Eric Holder and other people have decided to do measures like go around the country and start ballot initiatives and whatnot to try to change how your lines are when you're redistricting. That's a big project of Obama's friends. They succeeded in Michigan in 2018. That was on the ballot. But that was like a big kind of project across the country. You have people who are trying to get rid of the Electoral College, and they'll say, "Oh, in some cases they're saying we're not getting rid of the Electoral College. We're just making it so that whoever wins the popular vote, those votes will go to that person." Okay. a difference without a distinction, basically. That's something that they're also trying to push in my state as well. Not Obama specifically, but like Soros kids. George Soros. And it's not a buzzword, it's just the truth. What about all these social media platforms that come together to get real information off of the web? Like the Hunter Biden laptop situation. Or even some of this COVID stuff. A lot of the censorship going on. A lot of it sways, most of it, about all of it sways one way. I've got hit with fact checkers on stuff that had nothing to do with what they claimed they fact checked it for. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like, well, because of this article, like that article is even about what the thing that I posted. I'm like, fact check. What about all these super rich mega people? I think it was Time Magazine who wrote a piece that said how we saved democracy, how we fortified it. We got all these people to put in all this money, all these multi-billionaires. And they got all these laws changed across the country with these mail-in ballots. They changed all these rules for the election during the middle of the election that weren't properly passed. that was the most legitimate sort of claim that people had with election stuff, but them changing rules. There was a case where they were like curing ballots, and maybe it was Pennsylvania. It was in one state where you're not supposed to do that. And I'm not saying those votes weren't if they were curing ballots, that wasn't legitimate, but people are going around changing the rules in order to rig the game. So that's what they're trying to do now. They're not trying to, in some cases, people do just like low tech sort of cheat. And that stuff, happens all the time. I don't know if you can totally get that out. You can just try to find it where you can, and then hopefully punish the people who do it so people won't try to do that again. And you can definitely sway small elections like that. And depending on how much big ones, but fraud is fraud, and it's bad wherever. But let me play this clip of Obama. Let me play this clip of Obama. We talked about this before, but let's talk about it again.
Repeatedly now, Donald Trump has said that this election will be rigged against him. Can you promise the American people that this election will be conducted in a fair way?
It is. I don't even really know where to start on answering this question. Of course, the elections will not be rigged. What does that mean? The federal government doesn't run the election process. States and cities and communities all across the country, they're the ones who set up the voting systems and the voting booths. And if Mr. Trump is suggesting that there is a conspiracy theory that is being propagated across the country, including in places like Texas, where typically it's not Democrats who are in charge of voting booths, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense, and I don't think anybody would take that seriously.
Okay. So he laughed off the rigged election thing, and I don't think that's the context of which Trump really said rigged, but I mean, I think a lot of it was about just like the media treatment and all of I think it's a culmination of things. But Obama made the point, like, our elections are very secure because I can't control them. That's what he's saying. They're done locally, and they're not going to get messed up in Texas just because I don't want Trump to be president. And of course, he could afford to be honest because he thought Trump was going to lose. He could afford to be honest because he thought Trump was going to lose. So there's that. But after they found out that Trump won, that scared the crap out of them because they thought they knew the world so well. They thought they knew the world so well that they made Trump the nominee. At least that was their plan. If you read Hillary Clinton's emails, the Podesta emails that came out, and every day there was a new batch, I was like excited. I would run to my coworker, I'm like, there's more emails. Okay, that was a clear strategy that Trump was the nominee. That was the strategy. They wanted Trump or Ben Carson or Ted Cruz. That was like their top three dream team of, I guess, who they thought that she could just beat the pants off of, I guess. And they were concerned with like Marco Rubio or some people like that. So if you recall, Trump had all this like not necessarily glowing press at the beginning, but people would go on like Morning Joe a lot, and they're like, "Oh, Trump, yeah." And he got all this free media attention. Everybody was talking about him, but he was like the clear like front runner, and they made him the front runner. Now, I'm not trying to demean or diminish what he accomplished. I think there's so many factors that came into how Trump rose to be the number one person and ultimately win the election. There's so many factors that included it, including what he decided to campaign on and how he decided to campaign on it, and then just his particular background, that he was a household name at the time, and there's just a lot that goes into it. But they were so certain that Trump period would be the end of Trump. And then they had so much stuff that they could dump on him and use on him. And that he would just be destroyed, demolished. Now, they totally underestimated how much people disliked Hillary Clinton. I'm sure they knew to a degree, but they didn't know it was quite that bad. They didn't know it was quite that bad. So when he won, they were shaken. They were shaken. I wish I could have been there that night in Hillary's like war room or whatever when they thought that she was going to. She didn't write a speech to lose. And you know what? I don't know if she's trying to make some kind of comeback, which it would be gross if these Clintons just think they can come back, especially after the Epstein stuff. And it's gross that Clinton is like doing MasterChef classes and stuff. I'm talking about Bill, and still got to speak at the DNC and stuff. And people still take them seriously to a degree. It's gross. I don't know if she's trying to do some kind of comeback, but she actually read her like speech that she would have read if she had won, and she was just crying reading it. And it's like, this is, I don't know if this is therapeutic. Like, maybe you should do this privately with your therapist, but this is really cringe, big cringe. But she was darn certain. Everybody was darn certain. Now, and then what I mean, now the RNC had some good data at the time, so they, I guess, predicted or had a good idea that Trump was going to take the night. But I could tell you where I was that room that night, where I worked, people were surprised. People were surprised, and he won. And he won. And maybe they still thought that they could damage him so much along the way that he would just totally lose in 2020. They kept saying things like the economy is doing really well, but it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall. It didn't fall. It didn't fall. And we needed an artificial darn depression. And they threw in every single thing, including changing the rules. And they really liked the mail-in voting. Here's a little surprise for Republicans. I don't know if I'm gonna trigger up. It's not because they knew that they could just stuff ballots. That's not why they were so into it. They're so into it because they have so much control over the media, the mainstream media, Hollywood, these actors, these influencers, social media. They have so much control that if they just have a large pool of people voting, they feel pretty darn confident that they can win. That's why they want to get rid of the Electoral College. That's one of the reasons. A lot of people just want to get rid of the Electoral College because it'll draw some more money into politics, because you'll have to spend more money in media markets that are a lot more expensive. Honestly. But they are at this point trying to change a lot of election control, reasonable laws, the things that they were mad in Georgia about, ridiculous. Things they were mad in Arizona about, ridiculous. But it was they made them angry enough that they pulled out the All-Star game. Arizona had to go to court over it. Like, it's racist because we can't do ballot harvesting. No. Absolutely not. But they're claiming that there's so many rogue Republicans and state legislators across the country that is a good enough excuse to put more of our elections in the hand of the federal government, when Obama honestly stated in 2016, when the world was all jolly and they thought they could just win by every normal measure that they normally do. And he said, we can't rig elections because they're run locally. I mean, you could rig it on some kind of level, but that would be like local, like the big, like still the presidency sort of thing. He was like, that's ludicrous. That's ridiculous. So why would they change it now? Why are they trying to change it now? Because they want to rig the game so they always win forever. Here's a bit of Kamala Harris and her ridiculousness yesterday.
Fellow Americans, good morning. Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021. On that day, I was not only Vice President-elect, I was also a United States Senator. And I was here at the Capitol that morning at a classified hearing with fellow members of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Hours later, the gates of the Capitol were breached.
So, Ben Shapiro had a pretty good tweet. December 7th, 1941, 2,300 Americans killed. September 11th, 2000, 3,000 Americans killed. January 6th, 2001, 1 American killed, Ashley Babbitt. I'm not saying January 6th wasn't a big deal last year. It was, absolutely. 100%. Is it up there with Pearl Harbor or September 11th? Things that led us to war. I'm just not there. The imagery of it was awful, for sure. But people were attacking federal property all over the place last year too. And when Trump would send people to arrest them, they were saying they were kidnapping people. And they were bailing people out of jail. People like Kamala Harris was promoting nonprofits that were bailing rioters out of jail. So I just not there. Just not there. But that's not even the craziest thing. Here's a visual.
God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
I just want to remind you that the people making a big deal of this are the ones who also want you to forget the 4th of July. Or trying to undermine the 4th of July. Even use Juneteenth to undermine the 4th of July. But we're holding vigils, and the only person who was killed that January 6th was Ashley Babbitt. But that didn't stop Nancy Pelosi.
I want to acknowledge our fallen heroes of that day. U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Howard Livingood, Metropolitan Officer Jeffrey Smith, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Billy Evans of a later assault. Now I ask all members to rise for a moment of silence in their memory.
Okay. Moments of silence are normally some kind of prayer. But you can't say prayer because there's people who's non-religious. So sometimes people just stand and they just respectfully wait while everyone is saying their like mental prayer in their head. It's just like a respected moment for those who are gone. And that's fine to have a moment of respect for those who are gone. But obviously this was in relation for that day. So how sick of it is this all that they would use this moment of silence as a political tactic for people who were dead that day? Ashley Babbitt is the only person. She's a person who was a Trump supporter who protested, who climbed through a window and was shot. Sicknick died of a stroke. And she even said that someone died of a later assault that's like unrelated to this. I understand early on and it was still bad when people were like, there's all this news coming like, oh my gosh, it was bad last year, but it's a full year. It's a full year. So they don't care about the truth. They just care about who they can weaponize and what kind of goal they can get at the end. Like ending the filibuster so they can pass their darn election legislation and their Build Back Better. The Jen Psaki said, well, the public doesn't like it now, but we can make it more popular after it passes. That's how it happens. That's not my Jen Psaki impression, by the way. Mine is much better than that, but, I'm just mocking right now. Like, what is that moment of silence for? Who are they praying to? To their lizard gods to come over and take over? I don't know. They're overlords? That is sick. That is sick. It's just egregious to keep perpetuating this lie, this charade. And for what? For what? It's so crazy. That shows no respect to what actually happened. It shows no respect to those men who died. Just zero respect. And people wonder why we're so polarized and we can't heal. I mentioned this the other day, and I'll tell you why I brought this up. I said if you want to honestly solve problems, you have to address them with honesty. They are not addressing issues and problems with honesty because they don't really want to solve problems because they profit off of division. They profit off of division. So if someone wants to shore up elections, because now, like, for example, there's drop boxes. That's a new thing. Wasn't there before. Technically, you can say people are making it harder to vote. That doesn't mean that your vote is in some kind of danger because you can't have like 100,000 drop boxes and maybe there's just going to be 900,000 or so. 90,000 or something like that. Like that's how they'll. That's not like the real numbers or anything, but that's just an example of that. Like, yes, it would be less. So I guess you could technically say that. That doesn't mean that you are. It's some kind of big hindrance that you're not going to be able to vote. That your vote is in danger. But they have a way with words. They play with the words. They play with the words. I knew they were going to say some ridiculous stuff the other day. The reason why I had brought that up in a TikTok, that saying is because, and I did mention this the other day, but there was a college professor at UCLA. She's an Egyptologist, and she wrote a book called The Good Kings, I think. And I don't know what Kyle Rittenhouse had to do with it, but she wrote in her book that Kyle Rittenhouse killed 2 black men in some kind of white power race war or something like that. And so people were roasting her on Amazon reviews, which I don't really condone going on Amazon and leaving a bunch of reviews for books you did not read. Obviously you don't do it to be nice, but I don't do that. Like, but obviously that's a really big error. And National Geographic is the one who put it out there, who published it. So bad on her editors, bad on her publisher, and bad on her. That's information that was people could have known they could have known from the get-go if they wanted to know that. And so when she apologized, she tried to downplay it. She did admit it was a big error, but she also at the same time tried to downplay it. And then she complained about all the backlash she was getting. And she's like, well, people just don't want to talk about racism and patriarchy and all that kind of stuff. It's like, dude, if you think those things are important, then don't make yourself look like a moron and use things that aren't even true to prove your point. Because it just makes you seem like you had to reach into nothing to get the result that you wanted, even though it has nothing to do with anything. So it was a pretty incredible story. It's pretty funny, but sad that National Geographic missed that. If I'm gonna be nice and assume that was just an egregious accident and moronic, and not someone trying to openly just rewrite history right there. But so many people were questioning about things they read in National Geographic in the past, and they're like, is history correct? If they're lying about something that blatantly like just happened, a court case that was just live streamed, of course it was also unnecessary to even put in the book. It had to be super unnecessary. She didn't even research enough to find out that he killed 2 white people. Thank God he didn't kill Jump Kick Man. This kid probably wouldn't have still be in jail. Last thing I want to mention is that NPR did a story saying COVID vaccines may briefly change your menstrual cycle, but you should still get one. Now, when I saw this, I was like, no way, that's crazy. Not because that's new information to me, just because they're willing to admit it now. They're willing to admit it now. When people first started getting the vaccines, my sister told me that she was like seeing some people talk about how they got the shot, and in men, she said she saw some people talking about how it was like making their area kind of go on fire, and she's like, that doesn't sound right, and who knows if that was true or not. But there are other women who were talking about their cycles and stuff being messed up, and she's like, why is something that's being administered in your arm for your COVID doing all that to your body? And so she said that was what made her really like, eh. And so there's all these women who were talking about how their periods were messed up and their cycles were disrupted. And I did a story of this on TikTok. I did a TikTok about it before I left my house today. And people were responding like, I left a comment about how my period was messed up, and it got flagged for misinformation, and it got me comment banned. And there was a lot of women who would talk about this stuff, and then they just were silenced, and it was a conspiracy theory. So when I saw it, I was flabbergasted because like, this was a conspiracy theory. Now, we knew it wasn't a conspiracy theory. People suspected it was a conspiracy theory. Maybe there could have been a reasonable explanation. But now they're saying, oh, the study is saying that, it can impact your menstrual cycle, but you should still get it. A new scientific study shows that vaccination can cause changes to the timing of your menstruation, but it also shows effects are temporary, more akin to a sore arm than a serious adverse event. I think it's reassuring and also validating, says Dr. Allison Elderman, a professor and gynecologist at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon, who led the study. So they claim that it appeared Thursday in a journal. But I do think the timing is really curious because people have been talking about it for a while. On the Joe Rogan podcast with Dr. Robert Malone, and that is like, I think I heard Joe Rogan's biggest podcast ever, and the transcript of it is actually going to be put into the congressional record. He did talk about ovaries for a while, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a scientist. I can't prove. I don't have, and I didn't take it, so I can't like tell you how it did or didn't affect my personal ovaries or my cycle. But I thought what he was saying was pretty interesting. He said he was one of the things he did during the pandemic was he was asked to come and speak at a Hasidic like rabbi council or something about COVID, and so they really, really, really track women's cycles because of, he didn't get into how on the show, but they track it because they're very big on people being clean, unclean, and in reproduction, other kind of stuff. And so whatever reason, it's really, really important to them religiously. And so they keep track of it, and they knew that something was off. They knew that, and they advised their people and their children not to get it because it was affecting people. So I think it's interesting. Now, the study still says, you should still get it, and it's just a short-term effect. It's not a big deal. But whether it was or isn't a big deal, proves to be a big deal or not, there was a lot of people speaking out about how it was impacting them, and they were silenced. And here's the crazy thing about the vaccines. There's people who had the vaccine and had some kind of adverse reaction, and they decided not to get it. There's people who to get any more aren't going to get any boosters, didn't get the second shot, whatever. There's people who heard about people in those situations, and then they decided that they didn't want to risk it and get, have those effects themselves, and they would just rather assume the risk. There's people who went down a rabbit hole of research and decided that they didn't want to assume the risk. And some of that stuff was legitimate, some of that stuff was not. There's people who just decided they wanted to assume the risk, and they were never, ever, ever going to get the vaccine, and they're not going to. There's those people, no matter what you tell them, they're just going to be like, let the Lord have his way or the universe or whatever. there's also people who just like wanted to wait it out. There's people who are just like, you guys are all being experimented on, and we are. Let's be for real. So I'm just gonna see what it does to you before I put it in me. And the outside world and Biden and all these people would look at all those people, grouped them together, and it was just the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. Just us versus them, this continuous division that they need. Even though people have all these different reasons. And I think the weighted out people are obviously the most rational of the bunch. Like, people have to assess what sort of risk it is to them and decide what they're going to do, period. Some people, they're like, I can't afford to wait. I'm 80 years old. I have a respiratory disease, or I'm compromised. Like, they make whatever assessment is good for them. And that's what people should be allowed to do. But the weighted out people who are like, I'm going to see what it does to you in about a year. Because I know they didn't go through all these long-term trials with this, and they didn't even release all this data until like far into the future. So I'm gonna wait and see what it does to you. And pretending like those people weren't rational was offensive. Blatantly offensive. And the more they pushed and they pushed and they pushed to the point where they're making arguments at the Supreme Court. There's people who are going to be laid off from their jobs, have been let go of their jobs as they prep for these mandates because the court's still hearing it and it's going to take time for a decision. I heard somebody recently, their job was like, well, by next week, they're going to have to adhere to either letting everyone know your vaccination status, or you're going to have to go for the weekly testing, which it's hard to get weekly tested. You can't just like pop in and do that right now. And then the jobs aren't paying for them. You have to pay that yourself. In a lot of cases. So it is an expense to you. And you still catch it and spread it. So what does it even matter? Whether you're vaccinated or not, you should just make everyone do the weekly testing. And if you make all your employees pay for weekly testing, you're not going to have employees. Period. And then the labor shortage will just continue and exacerbate. Biden is probably like, his ego may be a little bruised a little bit, but it's when the Supreme Court, well, hopefully when and not if the Supreme Court shuts down his mandates, maybe he'll be a little happy on the inside because he could just kind of blame it on the tyrannical conservative court rather than just like common sense. And of course it would be struck down because it's a terrible thing that you're trying to do. But maybe he'll be a little happy about it because people need to be able to work and provide for their families and not have this hanging over their heads. And maybe some companies will still try to push for it because some of them are run by lefties, and some of them they don't have the freedom to not have liability from it, I guess, or they're scared about getting sued for stuff. But if the companies aren't willing to assume the risk for making their employees do that, then it's just unethical. They've done so many unethical things, and then even they're trying to argue in the courts. The left-wing justices are trying to say it's not really a mandate because you have the weekly testing option, as if the weekly testing option made sense because you can still spread if you have the vaccine, and it's still a cost. Like they tried to do that. They did that. They did do that with Obamacare. It's there's a fine or whatever. It's it's not the same thing as just like making you all do it. It's just like a tax or something. Forcing you to pay for insurance. It would be fine if you don't have it. That was crazy. But I guess we should have seen this coming. Government only gets greedier as time goes on. So anyway, this doctor that was on Joe Rogan's show, who they've ostracized, this creator of the tech, or one of the people who's accredited to creating this technology that they used for the COVID vaccines, has been sounding the alarm for a while. But he did spend some time talking about how it must be affecting the ovaries to be having these issues with their periods and stuff being off. Joe Rogan said on his show that he has a friend who took the vaccine and they are like 38 and then they haven't had a period in 8 months. That was the first I had heard of someone who had said that. But that's crazy. That's amazing. So I'm gonna play a little clip of something that he said, and if you haven't looked at his podcast, episode of the podcast, whether you believe it or not, there's some interesting things that he said, and I think it's worth checking out.
That think twice about giving these jabs to your kids. Among other things, your girls are born with all the eggs they will ever have. And these lipids are going to the ovaries, and they appear to be affecting menstruation in some way. But menstruation is just one of these adverse events. You picked out some of the other ones, the fatigue, brain fog, all kinds of things. I mean,
and to be
So there's a lot more that he said, but there's just a little tiny snippet. But they, in this article that NPR, they do let it know they're not exactly sure why they're like, it's safe, go ahead and totally do it. You should still get the vaccine. But by the way, we are not exactly sure why this happens. Unless you know why it happens, I don't know if you should still be like pushing for it to happen, because that's an unsolved mystery, man. That is an unsolved mystery. But this line really, really threw me off, and really just says it all. In the article, NPR quoted one of the doctors saying, "I think the beauty of the study is that it does affirm what individuals were reporting." Now, I think you need evidence, but wasn't the evidence that people were reporting it and that it was happening? So you have a confirmation. That's cool that you have that. Congratulations. But we knew that because women were expressing it. They took the vaccine and their cycles were thrown off. They experienced adverse reactions. They reported it. That was evidence. And I'm glad you looked into it. I'm glad you looked into it. Don't get me wrong. But to say, I think the beauty of the study is that it does affirm what individuals were reporting. And you're still not 100% sure why, huh? This is crazy. Yeah, at the Supreme Court, we have the liberal justices right now who are trying to still, we can pretty much guess. We'll see what happens, how they vote. But I can guess. But you have people like Sotomayor making these brain dead assessments off of false information about Omicron. It's not even true. So she can fabricate her way into the whatever way she plans to vote. It's insane. It is insane. Those weighted out people, it's crazy to me. The grandma killers, all these sort of accusations thrown at these people. And that's another thing that makes people vaccine hesitant, because of the aggression. The aggression, the accusations, when they apply some kind of morality, like their intentions are evil, like they even want to kill people, or like they're so selfish. President Joe Biden saying, this isn't about your freedom. Aren't you the president of the United States of America and you don't care about our freedoms? You don't care about what could happen to people. I understand the reality of the pandemic, but I understand that people inflated numbers and a bunch of other stuff too. And I understand that people used it to assume power, just like they're using January 6th to continuously assume power that they should not have over the federal elections. I'm glad that there's bills that failed. There was the For the People Act, but they have other ones that they have that Kamala Harris is like, we need to get them through. We need to get them through. Things that would take hold of our elections and make them less secure, because they want to rig it so they never lose. Was that Alinsky tactic? Always accuse your enemy of what you're trying to do? undermine democracy. So that's the show for today. I thank you guys for watching. It's crazy. I was so heated when I saw that headline. Again, not because I didn't know that was true. I did think the timing was very curious because there's all these millions of people who listen to that Joe Rogan podcast, whether they believed it all or not. But I had heard what people were saying about the menstruating, but what all the stuff that he was talking about was fascinating. But there's all these people who have been tracking it and know that something was off. And they're like, well, at least we affirm what people were saying was true. Thanks for catching up, science. Thanks for catching up to reality. I hope you guys join me tomorrow night. I'm going to have a 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to have a guest on TikTok. He's known as Millennial Spike Lee. And we're going to be having in-depth conversations about politics in life. He has a pretty unique perspective. He was someone who was a Democrat, who left the Democrat Party. He wouldn't consider himself a Republican, and I don't know if he would even consider himself a conservative either, but from like coming to like the right and being an independent thinker, he's a Black gay man. He said he's experienced more kind of harassment since that change. I saw one of his videos today, and he was talking about how someone on the left just basically said that people on the right just want to use like I guess Black conservative voices because he said racists like when they hear other Black people talking about Black people, and he's like, oh, that's true, but like who are the ones calling each other coons and stuff? That's like Black Democrats and stuff who do that. And he explained that the most racism he experiences is when he made that shift. So he's got a lot of interesting content, interesting videos. So we're going to have this first time that we'll be going live together. So that'll be streamed on my Facebook, my YouTube page at 7:30. So I hope that you guys will join me tomorrow night. We're going to have a lot more fun than we had on this show. like I try to have fun every day, but I hope you laughed a time or two, but I was upset. I was upset today about the hypocrisy, the lies, the craziness going on from just the left, and our lives are just largely collateral damage. So please join us tomorrow night, 7:30. Go to blacktnews.com. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all at Black Tea News. Only one step the different is Twitter, and that is at True Black Tea. Please check out different merchandise that I have on the website, like this Be Better Not Bitter shirt, and also the My Money, My Business shirt. When people tell you it's not your business, of course it is. They try to get every nickel and dime out of you. So go ahead and get the shirt and say, talk to the shirt. And so they don't have to keep arguing with you because it's right there on the shirt. God bless you guys. And I will see you tomorrow night. And otherwise, I will see you Monday for more news of the day with Black Tea News.